I would like to welcome to stage our next speaker, Luís Fernando Tófoli. He's a professor of psychiatry at the Faculty of Medical Sciences at the University of Campinas, Unicamp, in the state of São Paulo, Brazil. He's also the head of the Laboratory of the Interdisciplinary Studies on Psychoactive Substances and a member of the State Council on Drug Policies of São Paulo. He also has been battling to get legal permits to study ayahuasca and funding, and he has a wide range of knowledge in drug policy and empirical experience. Welcome.
Thank you. Well, good morning. As Bia said, I'm a psychiatrist and a psychiatry professor. And today I'm here to talk to you about the possible treatment of alcohol-related disorders with ayahuasca. And so you probably know that alcohol-related disorders are a serious worldwide public health problem, and that there's the currently available treatments have limited efficacy and application. So any new option is welcome in this field, or should be welcome in this field. So we are looking for new treatment options, and that's the idea of discussing ayahuasca. So briefly, first, I'm going to quickly review with you the evidence that we have that suggests that it would be interesting to study ayahuasca, and Anya has already mentioned a couple of the information that are important for that. Second, I'm going to present to you the initiative that we are assembling in Brazil to address this question. And third, we would like to briefly discuss some of the dilemmas that may involve ayahuasca research and ayahuasca treatment in Brazil and in South America. So let's start with the evidence, and it's important that you know that this evidence is under construction. It's far from being complete at the moment. But from preliminary evidence, we can say that we have the reports from the anthropologists showing that people who take ayahuasca in ceremonial and religious settings present reduction of alcohol consumption, and also some of them will say that they have been cured by the ayahuasca as well. We have reports from the ayahuasca groups, and these reports are anecdotal reports. And when I talk to them, they normally say that alcohol would be a very good first option regarding substances for the treatment, from their experience. And also we have the evidence from studies from the Ayahuasca Project study from Fábregas, a study from Paulo Barbosa, showing that ritual ayahuasca users consume less alcohol and have less problems with that, with alcohol consumption. And also we have the experience of Takiwazi. It's the oldest experience of ayahuasca setting for treatment of Western people with drug-related problems, and this is also interesting and important. It's important that we know that we have already animal models of alcohol dependence that being tested with ayahuasca, and new groups are replicating this right now at this moment in Brazil. And this is a study by Oliveira Lima, a recent study with mice that shows that ayahuasca showed an effect for the prevention of alcohol-related behavior that would be an animal model for alcohol dependence. We also have clinical evidence, and this is the study by Thomas and colleagues with Canadian First Nation subjects. It's an open, uncontrolled study, so we need placebo-controlled studies, and Anya has already mentioned that, and we are going to the same direction as well in Brazil as she's going in Mexico. And also, when you look, for instance, at this data from Paulo Barbosa, showing this is a survey of almost 2,000 UDV members, showing that previous to, considering their lifetime and comparing to the Brazilian population, the consumption of the prevalence of alcohol consumption is more or less the same. When you go to the last year and the last month, consumption is far less when compared to the general population. This does not mean that it's ayahuasca, it's the only responsible for that, but it shows that it might be important to look at this brew. And then how could we explain that? Is there any, how does ayahuasca works if it works? And which are the hypotheses that could explain that? Well, some of them has to, as you probably know, ayahuasca is a very complex plant product, as I may say, or a sacred medicine. And it has two major elements: DMT, which is a classical hallucinogen or psychedelic, and the beta-carbolines, which are inhibitors of an enzyme named monoamine oxidase. And both of these components have effects, biological interesting effects that could be responsible for the therapeutic effect of ayahuasca, not only on alcohol dependence or drug dependence, but also on other mental disorders. So DMT is an agonist of the 5-HT2A receptor, the serotonin receptor, this is similar to other classical psychedelics, but also it stimulates the sigma-1 receptor, which it's still been studied, and it probably has some effects on depression and subtypes of depression. Also, the possibility, and this has to have a question mark, it's the increased BDNF. We're not quite sure if the ayahuasca does it, but since all studied classical psychedelics do it, it's probably that happens. That increased BDNF, which is associated with positive outcomes in mental health in many disorders. And this is maybe a field it may be a way of having a therapeutic effect. Also, the increased monoamine effect from the beta-carbolines, because they inhibit the metabolization of these monoamines, and because as well one of them, tetrahydroarmin, is also a serotonin reuptake inhibitor. And harmin has very interesting results and has been, so far, until like 5 years ago, ayahuasca was thought only as oral DMT. And now we are seeing that harmin and the beta-carbolines have a lot to do, or might have a lot to do with the effects. Harmin, for instance, has neurotropic, and it has been shown by a group in Brazil that induces neurogenesis. It is also a partial agonist of the dopamine receptor in certain areas that could have an effect on addiction. So there's a lot of stuff to be studied regarding that. If we look at the brain areas, and here we are seeing a recent general model of addiction considering the brain areas, which divides these areas in three main effects and situations of addiction. One, what you see in blue is the binge drinking or binge use of drug or any drug. The red part is the withdrawal. It's responsible for the withdrawal symptoms. And the green one for craving. And you see with the asterisks, places where we already know from neuroimaging studies that ayahuasca has an effect. So basically, when we see, in this case we have, this is a general model for all psychedelics, but specifically for ayahuasca, it's the nuclear accumbens, the expanded amygdala, the insula, and the prefrontal cortex. So it's basically withdrawal and craving, which would be more interesting to be examined or hypothesize the effect of ayahuasca. When we look at the default mode network, which is a set of brain structures that are activated together during resting states, and its hyperactivation is associated with mental disorders. It is hyperactivated during alcohol abstinence with people with alcohol dependence, and also for people that have alcohol dependence, it is deactivated when they drink alcohol. And it's a classical, we know that already for ayahuasca and other psychedelics, that they deactivate the default mode network, and that would be something very interesting to be studied in clinical studies. Also, we know that psychedelic states offers, and this is not Talia Sushi, it's Petri et al. I apologize for the wrong reference. They enhance connectivity. And with a thinking a neuroanatomic, neurofunctional perspective, this could represent a reconstruction of connections and new ways of constructing possibilities of change in mental disorder situations. But also, if we look at a psychological perspective, that might represent the reconstruction of past and present experiences. And of course, the projection of new experiences for the future. And this is too soon to be said at the moment, but it's a tempting hypothesis to be examined as well with ayahuasca. But it's important that we know that ayahuasca is not only a simple pharmacological tool. It's not only just a drug. And I think we can say that about all psychedelics. It's not only the use of the substance. And specifically in the case of ayahuasca, it comes with different religions and different ritual perspectives. And they may be antagonic among themselves as well, and that's a question also. And these perspectives, they bring explanations, they present spiritual experiences, they offer also, when you're talking about groups, peer support, and so far that's the naturalistic environment that we've been seeing when we see good outcomes out of ayahuasca. So we cannot ignore the ritual perspective, the mystical experiences perspective, and the peer support effect. So to study that, we assembled an initiative that's called ICARO, and ICARO stands for Interdisciplinary Cooperation for Ayahuasca Research and Outreach, and it's in my university, University of Campinas, with the help of other important universities in Brazil. And we are basically trying to assemble a set of institutions to work together to help to solve some of the puzzles that concern ayahuasca and the therapeutic use of ayahuasca. And our first goal now is to look at alcohol-related disorders. And so we have at the moment, there is this, the Center of Chemical, Biological, and Agricultural Research, which is a research facility that's devoted to develop plant-derived medicaments. And we are planting there already the 2 species, especially Psychotria viridis. And we are extracting the active ingredients, and we are trying to develop pharmaceutical presentations of ayahuasca, and that means freeze-dry ayahuasca, ayahuasca in capsules, ayahuasca in tablets. And as you may think, those who drink ayahuasca in ritual, traditional settings, that may be a little bit upsetting. So I apologize for that. But anyway, if we think that not everyone who might benefit from ayahuasca would like to go to a ritual setting or a traditional setting, then we are thinking about expanding the possibilities for people in need. Well, but at the same time, as I'm going to say, we have to respect all these traditional settings. Also, the Chemistry Institute is helping us with a thorough assessment of the chemical components of the brew. And of course, we know which are the more important active ingredients, but we don't know what's the connection between the percentage of the plants that you put in it, how much time you're gonna boil it, when you're gonna do it, the time of the day that you collect the plants. So all these questions we're trying to address all these questions in order to understand better how it will translate in the final product. And also we are studying the possibility of organic contaminants and heavy metal contaminants in these different batches of ayahuasca that we've been collecting for this study. Also, we have a group that's specialized on the assessment of the active ingredients on body fluids, and our group at the faculty of the School of Medical Sciences, where we have designed 2 protocols to examine the question. They are already approved by the ethics committee of our university, so that won't be a problem at the moment. We're waiting for the funds to do that. One of these protocols we want to do in the ritual setting, comparing people who are having the regular treatment for alcoholism and others who are having the regular treatment and are going to ritual sessions in the UDV, one of the Brazilian ayahuasca religions. Obviously, this has to be voluntary, and they have to be informed about all the questions that involve that. And also another one where it's the more classical psychotherapy assisted ayahuasca with a placebo-controlled group, and also the blinding of who's taking ayahuasca and who's not taking ayahuasca. And we have a lot of technical questions regarding that. But about the dilemmas, I don't want to go into the technical questions of placebo, and has been discussed for a while. I would like to address some of the questions that involve the fact that we have a situation that is connected to sociological and anthropological perspectives and very different settings. First of all, we have to think about biopiracy of ayahuasca. Or in other terms, we're talking about the possibility of the biological and cultural appropriation of a traditional medicine or a traditional sacrament. So how can we operate in this field being respectful? And I'm going to address a lot of questions. I don't have answers for all of these questions. I'd like to think about them together with you. So another one is, what is that we call ayahuasca? So it can be bottled as Coca-Cola. And is this ayahuasca? Is this ayahuasca? Are those tablets that we made ayahuasca? And they're made out of freeze-dried ayahuasca. But can we call it ayahuasca or not? That's a question. For some groups, this is sacrilegious. Also, many of us criticize which is the real power of psychotropic medication. In this case, we're talking about Prozac, fluoxetine, and how it can be influenced by mass media. And for me, it's always a little bit frightening when I come to the US and I see antidepressants being advertised. For me, as a psychiatrist, this is very strange for me, and because we don't have it in my country. But would that ever apply to ayahuasca? We're going to have this mood brightener situation. Can it be commercialized? Will it be a commodity? We have to address these questions. Also, I would suggest, or really suggest, I'm not talking about Troy Peters because of the time now, but regarding this book by Nicholas Langlitz, it's ethnography of psychedelic laboratories, and it addresses a question where he points to attention, and I really recommend this book, that is present in psychedelic science, which is what psychedelic science says, and the difference between that and the beliefs of the psychedelic scientists. Part of the beliefs are not uttered, they're not mentioned. You can hint at them, and of course, when you talk to them during coffee breaks, you can understand that, but it's not always presented. And I understand that, because the idea is to find a way within the mainstream. But when you talk about ayahuasca, it's unavoidable that we discuss about that. How you get interested in ayahuasca, how I got interested in ayahuasca. Of course, I drank ayahuasca many, many times, and that made me interested in that. This is not only a scientific question. Well, I have to disclose that to you, and we have to address the question with, of course, looking at evidence, looking at what it shows, and not trying to say that ayahuasca is a miraculous drug, because it's not. I've seen a lot of people drinking ayahuasca and having zero changes in their lives, but we have seen a lot of changing as well. So there's no magical bullet, as Anya already said about it, and I agree with her. But it's important that you have that in mind as well. And there is one fundamental question that I think that means the yellow is 5 minutes. Thank you. I'll do it. Is the fundamental question when we talk about ayahuasca is who owns ayahuasca? Because if you go to any traditional group, they're going to say that they are the owners of ayahuasca, even among, and we say Native Americans, Indians, well, among themselves they fight regarding that as well. Not fight physically, but they're going to say, it's our ancestor who brought ayahuasca, or we discovered it. And so how can we, in this field, and can I say that biomedicine will ever own ayahuasca? I don't believe so, and I hope it won't happen. But if we don't address the question, we might be, to get into this field in a very naive way and perhaps not go in the more productive way. And so I would like to suggest two concepts that could help us to think about this and perhaps trying to solve these problems. One is the concept of community-based participatory research. And we are talking about bringing those who drink ayahuasca, who have experience with the settings. And settings of ayahuasca may be very, very complex to deal with. And ask them advice about how to integrate that for Westerners or for people who don't want to go into the traditional setting. And I think this is very important, and we can bring these people, and they can be co-authors of papers as well. This has happened in other fields. Why can't we do that with ayahuasca? Oh, this has happened with ayahuasca, in the Ayahuasca project, actually. Where a lot of UDV members were co-authors in some of the old papers. And also the idea of benefit sharing. It's the idea that the possible profits that will come if we prove or that ayahuasca is therapeutic in Western terms. Someone is going to produce ayahuasca and sell it, because someone has to do it. What are we going to do with the money? Can we assure that this money is going to be invested again in the original populations who brought this product or this tool to us or not? We have to address this as well. So, it's a highly complex field. And what I like to think of it as a mosaic of multifaceted colors that we can assemble together in a chaotic way, or we can work together to try to find a way of satisfying those and respecting those who brought this medicine or this substance or this ritual or this sacred substance, whatever name you want to call it, and those who want to use it for therapeutic reasons or Westerners. And I'd like to end. First, I want to show you my contact. And lastly, I would like to invite you to two initiatives that I'm involved with. First one is the Global Ayahuasca Project, which has Tanya has some cards, she's right over there. If you're interested in, this is an online survey, if you're interested in participating, she's happy to give you some cards with more information, and you can go to the website www.globalayahuascaproject.org, and you can fill. It's a multi-language survey in English, Spanish, Portuguese, German, Czech, and Italian may be coming soon. And we'll be happy to learn more about your experiences worldwide about ayahuasca. And also, my university, my school is offering a free course for undergraduate, graduate students, and also it may be possible to offer to professionals a free course about ayahuasca, interdisciplinary course where we're going to get into all these fields that I showed you within Icaro. It's going to last a week. 5 days actually, from July the 10th to July the 14th. It's free, and there's free accommodation and meals. The student would only have to pay for transportation. And if you have any questions now and later, I'll be very happy to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tófoli. I just want to point out something that he threw out casually out there, but I think this is as hot as it can get. They're actually planting the vine and the leaf in the university campus for scientific research purposes. So I studied undergraduate master's and PhD in Unicamp. And now, like many years later, I can go back to the university and visit a plantation of ayahuasca that him and his group is creating in the university. I think that's really mind-blowing.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Oh, okay. First of all, thank you for this excellent talk and the research that you're doing. I'm very pleased to hear that you're looking at producing ayahuasca in tablet form for dose standardization. Is that what you're actually going to administer in your studies?
Yeah, we are developing the standardization of ayahuasca. And this, of course, it might be going on as we do the trials, because this is not very well established. There are some theories that are not even published about the difference between daime ayahuasca, yahe, vegetal, and there are subtle differences in how they might apply to different mental disorders as well. I don't have evidence for that. It's just, science gossip about that. But the idea is that we could provide some standardization of ayahuasca, not only in terms of tablets, because as we saw in another study, the tablet might not be so good as the capsule form. So it would probably go with the capsule form or the liquid form. And not only this, but also which ayahuasca with which procedure we could reach a scientific recipe for having a standard ayahuasca that could be tested. That's one of our goals, certainly.
I have a second question, which is, I personally think the vast majority of the therapeutic benefits come from the dimethyltryptamine molecule. And so are you looking at including a third arm where you have a group that's administered just the Banisteriopsis caapi without the Psychotria viridis to rule out the influence of the beta-carbolines as being the therapeutic molecules?
That's an excellent question, because we have some evidence that some of the original groups and some of the indigenous groups only drink ayahuasca vine tea without the admixtures. So why do they that? Why do they do that? We want to know about it. So at the moment we can proceed on that branch of exploration, but it's very tempting, it's very interesting, and I would like to study that. Not at the moment, but I think it's very tempting and very interesting to study that. Thank you.
Hello. I have a question kind of for both you and Anya. As Americans, we see a lot of advertising for ayahuasca retreat centers, ibogaine retreat centers, in these places in Brazil, in Peru, Costa Rica, Mexico. And it gives us the impression as Americans that these things are totally legal and accepted there. And I've been sort of surprised in the last hour that it seems like some of your research is aimed at trying to decide whether or not these things should be allowed and how. And so I'm just sort of wondering, like, what is your take or the take of your colleagues in Latin America on these centers and the ayahuasca tourism and the other kind of psychedelic tourism in Latin America?
Well, one thing, thank you for your question. One thing is the legal status is different depending on the country. In some countries, ayahuasca is just tolerated. In Peru, for instance, it is regulated for therapeutic purposes, but not religious purposes. And in Brazil, it's the contrary. It's legal for religious use. It's not legal for therapeutic procedures. So what happens is when people want to, and they do exist, these places where people treat with ayahuasca in Brazil. I guess they are not as, probably Bia has more input about that than me, but they're not as common as we see in Peru. But what they do is they adapt to one of the ayahuasca religions and use this core, as religious centers treat, without ayahuasca, treat drug addiction as well. So, but there is a gray zone. This is a very complex question. We have to talk a little bit about that. But one thing that's important that's inside of your question is that it's not the same thing. And there are gray areas, and we have to be careful about it. I think that's one important message about it.
I have a question for you, Tófoli. So for those of you who don't know, he is modest, but he has a large empirical experience with ayahuasca. And first, I just want to know, like, how does your empirical experiences and years in ayahuasca communities in Brazil influence the design of your research protocols?
This is an even harder question, right? Well, thank you for that. One thing I think is it's important is for a while I was reluctant about studying ayahuasca. I was already a scholar and I studied something else, public mental health and other issues like that. And for a while I was reluctant about studying ayahuasca because that was a personal thing. It was good for me. How could I study that without being biased? So, but the ongoing experiences with ayahuasca taught me that certainly it's not as simple as giving Prozac, and even Prozac is a very complex issue. And with time, I thought that it was important that I would get involved with that. And so I think one of the key things is that I'm very respectful to the traditions, to the ayahuasca traditions. I do not intend to hijack ayahuasca from them. On the contrary, I'm grateful because they brought this opportunity that we can study that in Brazil with ease. And it's probably the first third of my presentation presents to you what I think about this. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you bring back to me the